told she does a lot of administrative work, for which they could hire an administrator at half the cost. The sheriffs are not happy with our current prosecution team. Historically, the sheriffs have always been behind the prosecutors. That is no longer the case. The prosecution and the defense bar do not get along. Historically, we had a softball team made up of prosecutors, judges, and defense lawyers. We would argue cases in court during the day and go out and have a beer and play softball at night. The quality of justice in the 5th Judicial District has disintegrated on all of those fronts.
Saddam, on yours, you said you want to correct racial disparity. Would you like to explain that?
I haven't seen as much in Summit County or in the 5th Judicial, but you know, it makes national headlines and is a national story that we hear. And I've put a lot of thought into this, and I thought about it because we have great minds trying to fix this problem, so who am I to really put something out there? But as a foreign national, I think the best way to approach the problem is diversity. You need to have a diverse group of people working for you, people that understand what I call the human condition. And by that I mean where you come from, what struggles are. If you came from a divorced background, if you're a foreign national that had to learn the language, if you've had a family member that's been incarcerated, all that gives you an understanding that other people may or may not have. So I think the best way to address the issue that's happening nationally is by having that diversity within your staff. And that's just something that I don't see at all. It seems like most of the DDAs come from the same background. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of them don't understand the mistakes that we all make. And to have that understanding would add so much to our community, and that's how I would approach that problem.
Bruce Brown, could you tell us what changes you have made since Mark Hurlburt left that have benefited JD5?
Because this is coming off the website. So, you know, there's been a lot of changes that have occurred in JD5. Let me tell you why I ran 4 years ago. It was pretty plain. I believed that you, as citizens, were not being well protected. I felt that too many cases were not being brought to successful conclusion, and that victims were not being properly represented in the courtroom. I put myself in the mix, and I said, if me or my family or my neighbors needed a strong prosecutor in the courtroom, did we have that? And so I said, I don't think we do. And so I was willing to put myself out on the line in order to be the lead prosecutor in the district. When we look at a case, number one is, we have a group of attorneys that work so hard, literally day and night. So you're getting, for your tax dollars, hardworking folks. But they also are trying to sort, to triage, and trying to separate offenders into two broad categories, let's say. Those that are deserving of a lengthy prison sentence, okay? Those are the people that are really a danger to you. Interestingly, people will point to me, maybe from that side of the table, and says, he locks too many people up. The truth is, we don't send any more numbers of people to prison than we did under my predecessor. We just choose them differently. The other thing is, we want to put people who have not come into contact with the criminal justice system very often. You know, not frequent flyer, the merry-go-round, in and out and in and out. We want to put people that don't fit into that category or who are young offenders into positions so that we don't criminalize them, and we give them an opportunity to give back to the community and maybe even come away without any criminal history. So in each of the 4 counties, we have a juvenile diversion program that drives kids out of the courtroom. They never even see the judge. And in fact, one of the things I did is I gave the police officers a piece of paper that they give to the juvenile offender and their parent. And they say, call the DA's office within 3 days of receiving this, and you'll get screened immediately for the juvenile diversion program. So this is just a little bit of the types of changes that I think I've made. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bruce Carey, you stated on your website that you wanted to eliminate charitable contributions as a factor of prosecution. Maybe I'm the only one that doesn't know what that means, but could you explain it?
I don't want it so that you can buy justice. Right now, they are doing charitable contributions. The charitable contribution fund states that you must give your charitable contribution to the DA5CCF. That makes a slush fund available to the DA's office. Charitable Contribution Fund. That makes a slush fund available to Mr. Brown, his employee, and another person to sit around and decide what charities get money throughout the district. Those charities then are beholden to the DA's office. It builds up great goodwill for the DA's office. Mr. Brown can come up to them and say, did you get that $1,000 check that I sent you? Hope you appreciated it. People are buying their way out of trouble. In Vail, there was a $500 receipt for a domestic violence strangulation case out of Vail, case number 2014-1373, that was not filed, and it said on it, diplomatic immunity. Now, if it is truly diplomatic immunity, then you have diplomatic immunity and you do not have to pay the $500 extortion fee. But if you're paying $500 to get out of trouble, that's just buying justice, and that is wrong. 23 years ago, a cop said to me in Leadville, will you provide a guide dog for my blind brother? And I said, sure, but it'll have to be as a charitable contribution. And I got charged with bribery, and I don't want to see that ever again.
So, Bruce Brown, I'll change the pattern here a little bit. Would you like to respond to that?
Sure. So now you don't want to respond to that? So, a couple things. In fact, what Mr. Carey said to the undercover officer, who's now the sheriff of Lake County, was, but we can't call it a bribe. That's disgusting. That is sad. And so he was convicted of official misconduct in 1996. I think law enforcement is going to have a hard time working with Mr. Carey. So let's talk about what the charitable contribution program does. First of all, it was started by my predecessors over 25, 30 years ago, and when I came into office, I tried to streamline it. I didn't feel comfortable with people coming into court and being told to go out to a receptionist who had nothing to do with the criminal justice system to send an untracked contribution randomly to a list of charities that had no tracking whatsoever. To me, that didn't sound right. So instead, what I did is I brought it in-house. I put the applications for every nonprofit who does one of two things. You have to provide services to deter crimes. Primarily that's kid programs, or you have to serve victims. So some of the agencies in Clear Creek County that get those funds, Clear Creek County Advocates, the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office in providing educational support, and Friends of Charlie's Place, our animal shelter that takes in animals who may have been abused. Eagle County, Bright Future Foundation, direct services to victims, Buddy Program, at-risk use, CASA, dependency and neglect cases, 4-H, who help the youth. These are the examples of the programs. They each get about, I think it's $4,000 a year. As of August of 2016 year to date, we were up to $24,000. So I took the program in-house. The applications are public. The recipients who get all the money are posted online in specific donations amount that Mr. Carey referred to. And when offenders are asked to make a charitable contribution, they're given an alternative. The alternative is do community service. The idea is, let's give back to your community the community that you've taken from. Now, I think these are solid ideas, and I understand, but we went outside the rules, so give me 20 more seconds, and I'll finish up. There are 2 legal documents that support this program. One is from the Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court, and the other is from the Chief Judge, who preceded our current Chief Judge in 2011, by the name of Thomas Moorhead. And what they said is, the courts can't take this money, but the DAs can. And I have absolutely no financial interest in any documents, and in any receipts, and I would never say, hey, we did this for you, so you did this for me.
Bruce Carey gets 30 seconds.
My final statement to the current sheriff on that day was, it will have to be done as a charitable contribution.
Okay, Sanam, bringing humanity back to our communities was stated as one of your goals. To quote you, it says, far too many families have suffered abuse, expense, and humiliation in JD5. We need to create better relationships and a different judicial style. Would you like to comment on that?
Absolutely. I'm going to start out by saying it's a little bit hard to sit here and not say much, but to answer the questions, because the reason I'm running, the reason I'm giving up my defense practice is because of what's happening to our community. You guys are the reason I'm running. Humanity is missing. Cases are overcharged. The deputy district attorneys they look at a case and say, well, it's a DUI second, so here's the offer. Well, did you look at the case? Did you read the facts? Did you consider this person's background? The case that really did it to me, and I got my client's permission because it was such a hard road for us. We had a case in Breckenridge where a dog on a leash bit a child. It was a family of 5 that came up to this dog and they were all petting it. It's disputed whether the owner said it was okay to pet the dog or not. I'll leave that at that. But one of the little girls fighting for the dog's affection went to hug the dog. And the dog bit once. The owner fell back with the dog, and that was kind of the end of it. Everyone was screaming for him to leave and get out. He was charged with first-degree assault, crime of violence. Second-degree assault, crime of violence. Child abuse. Just between those, he was looking at a mandatory minimum of 14 years. It took 3 DDAs to resolve this case. The final one, Daniel Tom, I give him all the credit in the world because he saw the case for what it was 2 days prior to trial. This family went through hell and back. The victim's family went through hell and back dealing with the DDA's office or the district attorney's office. To fly out, to take this child to trial, we were willing to pay restitution. It was an accident. 14 years mandatory minimum. When Judge Casillas dismissed a first and second degree assault on preliminary hearing, he said, those charges are reserved for homicide cases. And the last thing I heard from Alex Dietz before she quit is that Mr. Brown was thinking about backtracking the court and taking the case to the grand jury. You know why? Because the grand jury only gets one side, and that's it. And that's how they can get away with overcharging cases, ruining lives and making their numbers for prosecution look better. It's devastating.
Okay, Bruce Brown, you said you are in favor of allowing habitual DUI offenders to face felony prosecution. Can you tell us about that?
So we changed the law, and last year we made habitual DUI offenders subject to felony prosecution. This was an important change because too often people who had 6, 7, 8 DUI offenses were not getting any jail time at all. Unfortunately, we're going back to the legislature again this year, and I will be there to tell the legislators that it's not just a felony DUI for the 4th conviction, but it's also mandatory minimum sentencing. We left out mandatory minimum sentencing, and so if you're convicted of a 3rd DUI offense, you're looking at a minimum of 60 days in jail, mandatory minimum, but a 4th, there's no minimum, so there's this inequity. So I'm part of a group of prosecutors throughout the state that have met over the last several months debating legislative alternatives for next session, and we'll be going back to the legislature and asking them to require judges so that there's even administration of justice throughout the state. And so a basic floor is set of what that minimum should be if you're a 4th, 5th, 6th DUI offender. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bruce Carey. Bruce Brown said on his website that he's created a new sexual assault review team. You state on your website that you'll hire an expert, experienced sexual assault prosecutor. Is there a difference?
In Eagle County, there has been a difference. A deputy sheriff was charged with sexual assault in Eagle County, and he was given a plea bargain to a non-sexual assault plea bargain. So that is a huge difference. I would not make that charge lightly, but when I would make that charge, I would expect to win it. And by winning it, I would have an experienced sexual assault prosecutor shepherd that case from start to finish and participate in the trial.
Sanam, this is my last one for you. Both you and Bruce Carey indicated on your websites that you want to set up a